Welcome back to the deep dive. You sent over some really interesting material, all centered around this idea, the complex story of who I am.
Hmm.
So today, we're going on a bit of a mission, actually. We want to get into identity mapping. Think of it as a shortcut, maybe, to figuring out what really makes you you,
Mhm.
and how you can, visually track all the things shaping your world. Instead of starting with a load of definitions, let's just jump right in. There's a question here that kicks off the whole research journey, and I want you to really sit with it for a second. Think about this. How does your identity, who you are, change? How does it shift when you move between different places, like school versus home, or when you're completely online?
That's such a great starting point because it immediately busts the myth that identity is just one static thing. And the research definitely backs this up. Identity isn't like a folder with fixed files inside, it's much more like a narrative. It really is, just like the title says, the complex story of who you are. And it's a story that's constantly being written and rewritten.
Right.
And when you start looking at what goes into that story, you see just how much ground it covers. It's huge. You've got the deep stuff, the foundations, family, heritage, culture, nationality, traditions, all that. Then there are the more practical things, like languages, the ones you speak, maybe ones you're learning.
But it's not just the background stuff, the things you kind of inherit, is it?
Yeah.
The story also includes your choices. Things like your hobbies, your talents, what you're passionate about, and maybe most importantly, your values, what you believe in, how you see the world.
Exactly. Choice plays a massive role. And then the last big piece is, well, your social world. So friends, communities, any groups you're part of, and all the sort of social roles and responsibilities that come along with those. The tricky part, the complexity, comes when you realize these pieces aren't separate bubbles. The real challenge here, according to the research, is to think beyond just listing traits. We need to consider how history, culture, the society around us, how they fundamentally shape every single part of our identity.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's try to unpack this visually using the tool the research highlights, the identity mind map. Now, most of us have probably seen a mind map before, right? A central idea, lines branching out.
Uh-huh. Standard stuff.
But applying it here turns it into something more, like a critical thinking tool, not just a brainstorming diagram. You put your right there in the center. And what makes it different from just, say, doodling or making a list is that it forces you to group things, to link them, to actually see the relationships.
Yeah, the power isn't just in the bubbles, the nodes. It's really in those connecting lines.
Exactly. It shows how maybe your family heritage overlaps with your future goals, or how the friends you hang out with might influence the way you talk, your communication style. It sort of makes those connections, which are often invisible, suddenly visible.
And to make sure that map tells a reasonably full story so you don't miss any major plot points the research suggests, including 7 key identity layers. Think of them as maybe the main chapters in your life story so far.
Okay, 7 chapters. What are they?
Well, the first is foundational, family and cultural heritage. This is the deep history that shapes your present. Second layer is languages and communication, basically how you interact with everyone and everything.
Got it. Then layer 3. You mentioned this one is often overlooked, place. And that's not just your address, right? It's country, community, even if your family moved to migration story, that kind of geography.
Precisely. It shapes opportunities perspective so much. Then we move more towards the internal stuff. Layer 4, hobbies, talents, and passions. The things you actively choose to do and develop. Layer 5 is your inner compass. Beliefs, values, and goals, what guides you. And layer 6 is your immediate social structure. Friends, peers, and social groups. Who you're around day to day.
Okay. And the last one, layer 7, this feels very current. Your digital or online identity. That wasn't really a chapter for, say, our grandparents.
Not in the same way, no. It's a huge part of the story now. So 7 layers. And once you've got those sketched out on your map, that's where the really deep thinking starts. Because now you look at every branch, every connection, and ask yourself this question. Which parts of my identity did I actively choose? And which parts were, well, heavily influenced or maybe even dictated by society, by my culture?
Ah, that's a key distinction. Agency versus influence.
Yeah.
That can feel a bit heavy, maybe. But I see how it's insightful. Like, you might choose a hobby, right? Like skateboarding. That feels like pure agency.
It often is, yeah.
But the research points out that, say, the main language you speak or the holidays you celebrate, those are powerful influences you probably didn't choose, at least not initially. You inherited them.
Exactly. And it raises interesting questions about context. Someone might actively choose their political stance, that's agency, but the cultural environment they grew up in, that definitely shaped how those choices were even presented to them. That's influence. The map helps you see both.
Okay, I get it. So we have the basic structure, the 7 layers. But how do we make this map more than just a skeleton? How do we add depth?
Good question. It's about moving beyond just listing.
Right. So the research talks about using clear categories, grouping things under headings like heritage, community, digital life, and then really emphasizing the specific relationships, using those connecting lines purposefully. Maybe draw a thicker arrow to show how a specific family value directly influenced a career goal you have.
Yes, showing causality. But here's the part that often gets missed. Maybe the secret ingredient for making this really deep. You need to include the hidden or less visible aspects of yourself, too. This map isn't just for showing off to others.
Wait, hang on. If the map is about understanding who I am, why put private stuff on it? Like my biggest fears or dreams I haven't told anyone. Seems counterintuitive for an organizational tool.
That's actually where some of the most critical insights come from. Think about it. Those fears, those dreams, maybe personal challenges you face, they are often the engine driving the visible parts of your identity. If you secretly dream of being an artist, that hidden desire probably influences the classes you choose, maybe the people you admire, even how you spend your free time online. The map's incomplete if it only shows the shiny surface. It needs the stuff underneath, too.
Ah, okay. That makes sense now. The things we might try to hide could actually be the main reason we do the things we proudly show everyone else.
Precisely. And the research offers some guiding questions to help with this reflection. Once your map is looking fuller, ask yourself, which parts of this map are most visible? Like, what do people see or guess about me in the first 5 minutes? And conversely, which parts are really private? Or just less obvious unless someone knows me well?
That's a good contrast. Visible versus private.
Then there are the environmental questions. How does the culture I live in actually shape my daily choices? Even small things like clothes or music tastes. And of course, the big one we touched on, how does my online life shape my overall identity?
Yeah, that's huge. The persona you have on, say, TikTok might be completely different from who you are in classroom, right?
Absolutely. And mapping those differences, maybe even conflicts like attention between your offline values and how you act online, that's where real self-awareness comes from, according to this research. Ultimately, doing this personal mapping helps you connect your own story to bigger ideas. Things like culture, diversity, belonging. It shows how your unique story fits into, or maybe sometimes pushes against, the larger human story.
Which leads us nicely to the next logical step, doesn't it? Taking your own map and seeing it alongside others. In a group context, once you've charted your own complex story, sharing it seems to unlock another layer of understanding.
Yes, the pair check or class sharing activities mentioned.
And the idea isn't just, here's my list, here's yours. It's about real discussion, right? Talking about similarities, differences, and thinking about how all these unique identities together create both connections and diversity. You might realize, oh, someone else struggles with this too, but also see how their way of navigating it is totally different based on their map.
Exactly. And when people explain their maps, the real gold is in how they explain the links, the connections they drew. It's not just reading the labels, it's explaining the why behind the lines.
Can you give an example?
Sure, someone might point to a line connecting, say, family heritage and communication style and explain, I see this branch, it shows how my culture influences my language. Like, I might use slang online, but my heritage means I use more formal language when speaking to older relatives. They're explaining that dynamic tension.
Okay, yeah. Or maybe someone points to a section about community involvement and says something like, this part here, I feel really proud of this because it connects straight to my community and the volunteer work we do. It gives me a sense of purpose.
Exactly. Those specific relationship-based explanations are where the learning happens. Because then when you step back and look at a whole group's maps, you get this amazing double perspective. First, you really appreciate the incredible detail and uniqueness in every single person's story. But second, you start to see patterns, common themes, shared challenges, similar influences weaving through all those diverse experiences. That's how we understand society better, right? By seeing those threads.
Definitely. Okay, so bringing this all together, what's the big takeaway from doing this whole identity mapping thing?
I think the most vital point, and it brings us right back to where we started, is this. Identity isn't static. It's not a finished product. It is dynamic and constantly evolving. It's always in motion. It's never really done.
So it's more like a verb than a noun.
That's a great way to put it, and that's why the map is so powerful. It captures your history, yes. It maps your present reality. But maybe the most exciting part is that it lays the groundwork for your future. It gives you a snapshot of a moving target and maybe helps you steer where it goes next.
Right. So as you, listening, Think about your own complex story. The advice here is, be proud of your map, whatever it looks like right now. But also stay curious. Keep asking questions about the influences shaping you, and maybe question some of the assumptions you hold about yourself.
Keep that map alive, basically.
Exactly. And as you reflect on what you might discover by charting out those 7 layers we talked about, keep this final question in mind. Let it bubble away. How will your identity continue to change over the next year or the next 5 years? And crucially, what choices will you make to help guide that ongoing transformation?